creating the entrepreneurship mindset through critical thinking is the way of education. It's not reading, it's not changing curriculum, it's to ask any question and get away with it. There is no red lines. There is nothing there. You can ask any question which comes to your mind, including is God there or not. Even that simple question, you have the right to ask it, whatever the answer is. So the people have to be allowed to get that through.
To sensible people, this goal of transforming the descendants of present-day humanity into an alien species will sound like science fiction, even a kind of science fiction that can hardly be taken seriously because it develops out of the view that is already so alienated from our humanity. We file taxes, vote in national elections. Right, why do we do those things? Because there's a persistent need for order and hierarchies, as opposed to a world where we can each of us do as we please. Do as we please. Do as we please.
And what is the logical conclusion of this? Are we ever going to be able to draw a line in the sand?
We are the most powerful generation that's ever existed in human history.
In your talk, in the very end, of course, it's a very positive future shared here, which is humans being enhanced by all the different technologies hybrided or blended together.
To overcome the legacy that nature has bequeathed us by the chance-driven mechanisms of evolution. If we just leave people free to make their own choices about research and development, they believe the new world will arise.
And online fashion retailer ASOS has been praised for using untouched photos of models to promote their latest swimwear range. Customers have commended the website for helping to make natural be seen as more normal.
Turn into the sort of plastic fantastic that seems to be approved of by a certain group of female.
It does make you wonder why any photos of models are touched up, really. I mean, they're beautiful people. Why touch them up in the first place? Do you think other retailers might follow this lead, Dan?
I think they will. I think they will. And look, I think it's a terrific idea, and it's this idea of seeing people, you know, normal people.
Now, have you checked your social media already this morning? Chances are you have, and you're not alone.
And part of the problem that's the flip side of, you know, you just being social and wanting to get on with people is that you start to care about people's whose opinions normally would not matter to you if social media didn't exist. So do you think that this could have long-term psychological impacts, Sandy?
In a funny sort of way, Lisa, often because we're on social media, it makes people feel quite vulnerable because they overcare, they overshare. And with that vulnerability, they're increasing their desire to be liked. So every time you get a like, what you're wanting to do is get a serotonin or dopamine hit.
Phones yet, but I find that they get disengaged when they're just totally absorbed in the screen and they don't really realise what's going on around them, and that's what this survey found. And I don't want that to happen to my kids. I totally agree with Michelle. It's new technology and it's part of their future lives, but I just think we've got to be careful how much we allow them to absorb themselves in these sometimes mindless screens.
Yeah.
Are able to wield this kind of power in someone else's local community.
It sent chills up my body. Who in their right mind would want to have a cross taken down? That's been there for, 60 years.
The organization also wants Bibles and crosses inside the building removed as well.
I don't think that it's our job as a society to change everything to make sure
no one is offended. I really believe it's a slippery slope, and we're really spiraling in it right now.
Do you anticipate more divorces this year?
You know, I tell you, we went through all 50 states. We managed to look at this for the past 15 years and see who is going through a divorce, who's filing. Is it a man or is it a woman? Well, states that kind of turned blue or red, we found an increase in divorce filings for those which were blue states versus red states based on how that election went. I even got people coming to our website saying to us, listen, I am going to file for divorce because he voted for Trump or she voted for Hillary. And believe it or not, those aren't valid reasons for filing for a divorce, but we've gotten them sent over more time than you can imagine.
Brand new video this morning showing the moment a car rams into the Arkansas State Capitol, destroying the Ten Commandments monument. The suspect is now in custody, but the community, of course, is still rattled as this act of violence comes less than 1 day after that statue was unveiled.
A Christian school in Canada is being told to stop teaching Bible verses that could be deemed offensive.
So in fact, there's this changing of the guard when it comes to the young generations. When you look at those that are retirees, those aged over 65, still more than 70% of those adhere to Christianity. So you're seeing that shift, that increased globalization, that secularization that's happening, where Australia is really following the lead of what's happened in many parts of Europe.
More than a dozen new laws took effect today, but one in particular has gotten national attention.
Governor Matt Bevin publicly signing House Bill 128, which allows public schools to teach courses on the Bible.
The scriptures is always positive things, positive influences, positive, and kids need to have some positive influence these days.
The bill's sponsor says students need to understand the role the Bible played in American history.
Really did set the foundation that our founding fathers used to develop documents like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. All of those came from principles from the Bible.
A lot of things we do with science is analytical, and we don't spend a lot of time contemplating how things are, why things are the way they are.
But the idea that we would not want this to be an option for people in schools, that would be crazy. I don't know why every state would not embrace this, why we as a nation would not embrace this.
But Eubank had to get to the little girl, putting up a blanket of protective smoke so he could run. The rescue took just 12 seconds. The little girl was safe.
Why'd you do it? Love. And I remembered this scripture, greater love has no man, he laid down his life for his friends.
Yes, ma'am, and that's John 15:13. Greater love hath no man than this, than he laid down his life for his friends.
The local authorities say passages in the Bible that denigrate or vilify one's sexual orientation should not be studied in class. The school disagrees, however, saying the ban would violate its constitutional rights.
That's what the school board used, is the word offense. They said you need to get rid of all offensive texts from the Bible and stop teaching this.
We're talking about things and houses and everything. I think they've got it tough because of what's going on in the world with social media and all of those other things,
All the
and the
pressures.
internet.
Yeah.
I think as good as it is, it has 50% bad to it.
Yeah.
That is the other thing they're finding, which is that in a sense, the luckier we are, the sadder we get. So there's,
You're not sad, are you?
No, not anymore. I'm on antidepressants. But it is absolutely true.
that's
and
good to the club.
That's right. It's
Listen,
nice to be here. But that's what they think it is.
Can I just say something? I told you, I think everybody should be on an antidepressant. The world would be a better place.
This truly unique event marks the end of Mona's Dark Mofo Festival, a 2-week celebration of the dark, the cold and pushing the boundaries.
The park is home to many of the festival's artistic draw cards and is said to be darker and fierier than ever before.
Well, for the last 2 weeks, sunrise and sunset in Hobart has been marked by an eerie, echoing call. Lee Carmichael said, "There's a school of thought that believes it's by facing our fears and embracing the darkness that we more deeply appreciate the light and the joy." 2017 was the 5th year that Hobart has played host to Dark Mofo. In the words of its incredibly talented creative director, Lee Carmichael, Dark Mofo explores the full spectrum of human emotion, enabling a deeper understanding of the nature of existence. Indeed, the entire city has been booked out. Hotels, restaurants and transport businesses all benefited from this festival. And indeed, it was bringing light out of the darkness.
Are we months, years away from understanding the next dimensions?
That's a really great question. It turns out that there will be an accelerator. So an accelerator, particle accelerator, accelerates protons to enormously high energy. And there's going to be a new one that turns on. It turns on in 2007, but really will begin operation in 2008. It's called the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC. It's going to be at an accelerator facility called CERN near Geneva.
The world's largest atom smasher.
Questions of our universe. It's a puzzle that's challenged scientists, scholars, and the religious.
And it was hailed as one of the most significant scientific experiments in history. Well, now the Large Hadron Collider is getting a new piece of kit. Scientists described it as an upgrade comparable from going from a Morris Minor car to a Formula One car.
Physicists believe they have finally found the Higgs boson. The initial discovery of the so-called God particle was first announced last July.
The Higgs boson, so far an elusive factor that in theory holds matter together.
The collider near Geneva, Switzerland, crashed 2 proton beams into each other at 3 times more force than ever before.
And we are privileged to witness this event in happening right before our eyes. We are in some sense recreating the process of creation itself.
I mean, does it lead you to believe that, damn it, we're just a small part of something very big?
Just a final thought, because you came up with a lovely line talking to our producer saying, nature is tricky to understand. Every time you peel back a layer, the universe presents you with something else that you don't understand.
That's absolutely true.
The Large Hadron Collider was designed to replicate conditions seen shortly after the Big Bang. It broke down, though, soon after it was switched on in 2008.
But we'd also learned that nature is a real tease
The title of your next book, perhaps.
Right, that there seem to be all these hints that we can put it together into a beautiful package and understand things more deeply, maybe learn about the dark matter. I hope that the LHC will take us beyond.
Professor Stephen Hawking say that we might just be around the corner from having a theory of everything. In my experience, that hasn't been the case. Every time we reveal something that we didn't know before, suddenly there are more unanswered questions.
And by the way, the next step beyond the Higgs boson is to find dark matter. We know that most of the universe is actually invisible. It keeps the Milky Way galaxy together, in fact.
So there's quite a lot of evidence for dark matter. If you look at the way galaxies rotate, they don't really fit in a model of the evolution of the universe if there's no dark matter. What's remarkable is you can build a self-consistent model of how the universe has evolved with just one type of dark matter.
Human beings like to be more on the control side, is the possibility of, for example, creating dark matter in the lab.
Then there's the question of why is there more matter than antimatter in the universe? This is really the speciality of the LHCb experiment. At the Big Bang, there should have been equal amounts of matter and antimatter created, and yet there's matter left over, which is good. We're here. It's a good thing, but we don't really understand why.
Now they hope the study will bring new insights into the nature of the cosmos and how it all came into being.
So we don't understand what dark matter is made of. We know it has to be something beyond what we know, and we don't understand why we are here. And we know that there must be something beyond what we know to explain that we are here. Okay, so I think that the LHC will for sure shed some light.
When people say that it's a leap forward from Morris Minor to Formula One car, are they right? Is it of that magnitude?
The technology has come on in leaps and bounds, as one would expect for frontier science.
But one thing that really struck me is how much the search for the Higgs boson captured the public's imagination to a significant extent, really. I mean, there was journalists from all over the world kind of queuing up to report on it.
This gets to your question of whether this is a special time in history. I think it's a very special time in history. It's as if we're fish who've suddenly discovered that they live in water.
Why do you think that was the case? I don't remember a scientific event that caught the public's imagination to that level for a very long time.
Jerome Friedman, your former colleague at MIT, I think said that if we see evidence of what has been proposed by you, it will be extraordinary. It will shake up everything. It's pretty good.
That would be pretty good. I mean, it's true. I mean, it could be that we need to get to a little bit higher energy to learn more, but right now we think we will definitely learn something at the energies that we will explore. But there could be even more exotic phenomena like higher dimensional.
It's a really incremental step.
It's not incremental in the sense that it's 7 times the energy of current accelerators, so it really is the right energy to probe these questions. It's just that if you get a little bit more energy, you might learn a little more. For example, if you get to even higher energies, you might be able to make higher dimensional black holes if this idea is right. So there are new things that could occur with higher energy. But we do expect to be able to know the answers to these questions from the Large Hadron Collider. I just want to clarify.
What's likely to be another dimension?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there are 4 dimensions.
Yes.
What would be a 5th? What would be a 6th?
Art makes life worth living. Because via art, I think we can discover beauty, whereas science makes us live free, because only with science and applying logic and requiring proof, we can be free from swallowing any rubbish propaganda. So I work at CERN so many years, I never noticed all these things are so beautiful. But I just want to show you some of the pictures here so that you can see how we at CERN took some photos, and you look at them and you are ému, you are sort of moved, because they contain worlds within the simple photographed item. You can see things that are there from reflection in the grass. You can see a ladder that goes to heaven. There is such a majority of devotion to the projects that it's sort of sublimination de l'environnement. So you can see several of them where you have the impression that it's like the end of the world as we know it.
LINAC 2 dates back to the 1970s, so the technology that's been used for LINAC 4 is considerably more advanced. It allows you to control those proton beams much more precisely, and also gives you control over much greater quantities of protons, which is what you need for investigating the experiments that they have on the Large Hadron Collider.
Where we're exploring the mysteries of matter. Now, the LHC is a particle accelerator. It's the largest, highest energy particle accelerator in the world.
We're talking about a machine that'll take us right to the beginning of time itself.
There will be people who try to piece out from it what were the different, they'll test the different ideas. So lots of people have suggested what might be there. But generally they're going to look for energetic particles, they're going to see where did they come from, what could have been, what was producing whatever they found.
Where do we even start? I mean, come on. Where do we go next from here as well?
In Canada, what we understand is the world's first baby to be genderless has now moved through the system.
But physically, you can tell. Okay, all right, I'm not getting it.
What are you talking about?
Maybe we need to have another word for male and female.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is it that word that's offensive?
It's getting out of control.
The United Nations was established to deal with the question of conflict, to make sure that we did not go back to war. Has it been in any way successful? It certainly hasn't stopped us going back to war. In fact, it's getting worse.
Now, just because they decide that, well, science has decided, much other discussion has been made, is that when you have a certain set of genitals, sex organs, reproductive organs, that they are ascribed to be male or female.
Sure, a society like the one in Gattaca won't happen overnight, but we still need to be cautious because it could happen progressively. If we greenlight this kind of technology, who's to say we won't greenlight the next one, and the next one, and the next one?
Where do we go next from here as well? You know what? I'm going to be species neutral. From now I'm going to be a toaster. I'm going to identify as a toaster. It's going to be fantastic. I think we have a responsibility to at least engender some sort of identity into our kids.
But why from the start would you make life so difficult for the kid to have to explain in all the forms, all the going through, that my mum and dad, sorry, is that gender normative? My parent, co-parent, guardian plus one, what is the official term here?
Up until now, our whole society has been rooted in the fact that every one of our genders is here because of chance. I am a woman today, not because my parents specifically chose me to be, but because that's just how the dice rolled. We now have a way to control for gender we have never encountered before. It's like tipping the scale in a balance that, up until now, we had thought to be fairly even.
Controversy continues over the new "In God We Trust" decals going on Grovetown public safety vehicles.
Mayor Jones took to his personal Facebook with a statement. He says, quote, "Without a doubt, the support has been overwhelming for this, and I stand behind my decision."
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to call your attention to something. According to Peter, this is the message of scoffers. The problems scoffers have with God's word and revelation is not only intellectual, it's moral, walking according to their own lusts.
Jack, you and Kristen both were very brave and decided to go on a show that just has a few opinions. The View.
So I do think the Bible has not changed because it was written thousands of years ago and translated 60 some times. So what we're reading, even if you study the Bible, is interesting enough. But faith has changed and it has evolved to accept people.
And you say no, you would not.
That's correct.
What do you think Jesus would have done in that situation?
I don't believe that Jesus would have made a cake.
You don't?
If he'd have been a baker.
Oh, come on.
But he would have.
Jesus
been
would have
with
made the cake.
He would have hung out with them. Jesus could turn water into wine.
No,
can do whatever he
you
wants.
can believe in the Bible and everything, but Jesus, that's a deal breaker. Jesus is going to make the cake.
But Joy, Jesus wouldn't contradict his teachings, first of all.
Now, this is pretty interesting. I've for probably over 10 years now, I would say, maybe even longer than that, I've loved studying generational patterns of the generations in the United States. Let me show you something very interesting. Under this
And broken down by age as well, millennials and Gen Xers were more supportive of the idea of these gender-neutral birth certificates than the older population.
Gen X, this is my generation. Gen X, those born between 1965 and 1983, 16%. What about the millennial generation? Millennials, those born between 1984 and 2000, 4%. Only 4%.
It is taught at our Christian colleges and universities, much less our seminaries, that Adam was a myth, that there was no person known as Adam, that he's just a construct, a literary form, a metaphor for some kind of primordial man. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have time to go into all the details, but that is an extremely dangerous thinking.
Remember that. No scientific advancement has gotten the automatic green light without carefully exploring the moral and ethical implications of the situation.
But let me say this. While I don't think I can speak with authority on the scientific aspects of creation, there's some very gifted people who can do that. I can tell you this, that the matter of creation and origins is not just an issue for the scientists.
It's an act of, the genes they got were random, were chance. We weren't really deeply responsible for it. We were responsible for deciding to have kids, but we weren't responsible for the genes they ended up with. Whereas if you do gene editing or if you do embryo selection, you are responsible for your decisions, which makes you more morally chargeable in ways.
It is also an issue for the philosopher. It's also an issue for the historian. It's also an issue for the theologian. And from the realm of philosophy, I can tell you this: you cannot have a creation without a creator. You cannot have a beginning without a beginner. And these are some of the most fundamental truths. You cannot have an effect without a cause.
We have to understand the gravity of the consequences this could have and ask, where do we draw the line with ethical science? What is right and what is wrong?
So if we got really good at engineering our germline, you would have to anticipate, without knowing what it could be, that there's going to be some not necessarily negative consequences, but just weird, different, sideways things that become possible.
And mankind rebels against that knowledge. mankind is anxious to put that knowledge away from them, recognizing that we do have a creator.
I'm proud of it. It's our national motto. Why wouldn't I be proud of it?
Would you consider getting one for your car?
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's enough of that in the U.S.
We want to reject the idea that he has any claim over us, whether it's the claim of creator, the claim of redeemer, the claim of ultimate judge.
The longest living couple in the state celebrated their 80th wedding anniversary today.
West Michigan couple is the longest living married couple in the state, possibly the country.
Now this love is for real, you will never let go, never let go. Whoa, there's more than just words that beyond my control, out of control. Oh, this is real love, this is real love. Oh, this is real love, this is real love.
He says the secret to everlasting love is honesty and forgiveness.
I can honestly say I'm so proud of this album. Like, I can't wait for the whole world. I can't wait for the whole world to hear the whole thing, because I think they're gonna be kind of weirded out by how different it is.
And emotionally abused her for years.
Kesha's new song titled Praying, due to drop today, written with Macklemore star.
And it's been nearly 4 years since Kesha has released a new single after a nasty legal battle. And she's come back in a huge way.
The singer has released a dramatic, eye-catching video for her new song Praying, and announced that her new album Rainbow is due out August 11th.
But it's also going into my psyche, so it's just kind of my mind, like, thinking all these thoughts of like, wow, I never thought things would get this dark.
Mm-hmm.
And they do occasionally, you know, and that's how the brain works sometimes, and it sucks, but I do, and I've been super open about it, but suffer from depression.
Animals, I have a surprise for you. Your support and love and kindness has gotten me through, hands down, the hardest time of my entire life.
Kesha begins the visuals with a spoken word intro contemplating her current disposition. Am I dead, or is this one of those dreams? Those horrible dreams that seem like they last forever? If I am alive, why? Why? If there is a God or whatever, something somewhere, why have I been abandoned by everyone and everything I've ever known, I've ever loved?
But like, one of the stories, there's a song called Spaceship, and I was in Joshua Tree, totally sober.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me preface.
Okay,
completely
that's
sober.
a big deal, by the way.
No, it's not a big deal, but I think people would be like, oh, she was like on acid or something. And I wasn't. I was on nothing. I was a totally sober Sally, just lady in the desert. I look up in the sky, and there's a bunch of spaceships. I swear to God, there were like 5 to 7, and I don't know why I didn't like try to take a picture of it. I just looked at it. I was sitting on a rock, and I was like, well, what in the hell is that? Look like little balls of fire in the sky, and it's so cliche, but I looked it up after that, because I was like, is someone just messing with my head right now? I literally was there like a fake alien spaceship situation in the desert? Like, I looked up everything because I thought someone was just like, there must have been some sort of explanation. And after that, I was like, okay, so that's been a huge running theme on this album. Like, the cover of my album has a bunch of spaceships. It like really hit me where I was like, wow,
it's real.
Like, there is something out there, and it might, I don't know what it is, but it looks like a fireball in the sky, and there's like 10 of them, so.
That's crazy.
So I have empathy for people. I have empathy for people. And, you know, I see people be mean or bullies online and stuff like that. And usually it's coming from an insecure place. If you're resentful, that's like drinking poison, you know?
Yeah, it continues.
And does nothing to the other person. It's just like you're poisoning yourself. So it's really the best thing you can do is just forgive and heal and move on.
Is forgiveness important to happiness?
I think it is. It might be taking you somewhere even more magical than you could imagine.
You believe in fate, and you believe that you kind of have to give up to the universe a little bit.
I mean, or you can be a control freak and be like a total psychopath. And that didn't work so much. Trying to control the entire world didn't work so much. So I, at some point, had to be like, well, I can't control the entire world. So if I can't control the entire world, how about I control nothing?
Visa execs are calling it the journey to cashless.
First of all, I'd like to say that we always had a disruption. It's just, it never was so disruptive as it is these days. And there is a reason for that.
They have the same problem with cell phones. It's kind of crazy today that we live quite comfortably in a world that George Orwell would have thought was super crazy.
So what do we say to those who say, you know what, listen, privacy is out the door. Everything's about convenience right now, and forsaking privacy is worth it given the convenience of devices like Alexa.
You say, well, then you should be happy. I mean, those kind of people, they're loving life right now because we are constantly giving up privacy, and we are only going to give up more privacy because we're entering an era of artificial intelligence.
I mean, Elon might be proof that time travel exists because he seems to have either more hours in the day than the rest of us have, or he's from the future. He's just, in all seriousness, I'm laughing because his ability to think cogently and thoughtfully about such a wide range of topics while running these multiple companies and seeming to be running them well is just, I mean, it's like it makes you shake your head.
Like we all carry a phone with a microphone that could be turned on really at any time without our knowledge, with a GPS that knows our position, and a camera, and well, kind of all of our personal information. We do this willingly, and it's kind of wild to think that that's the case.
To get that data everywhere, they have to invade your privacy in all kinds of ways. So we have this constant trade-off. For convenience and for innovation, we give up our privacy.
Issuing an alert this week that some so-called smart toys may be spying on your kids.
Even though these toys may be a lot of fun, they may be very educational, they may also have a dark side.
But the way privacy and technology work is we just give it up as time goes on. So eventually they'll record more and they'll sell it to more places.
But that will use this data, whether or not they're large corporations or governments, to undermine our privacy, which is the foundation of a free society. Well, I was kind of shocked in reviewing the state of things to realize that these had all occurred. The digital age has brought us many wonders, but when you look at the bottom line of how it's impacted our economy and society, it's a troubling report.
But warns using it on air travelers could be a dangerous step toward building a more powerful surveillance infrastructure on Americans.
There's a pretty good chance that over time, if we don't put in place checks and balances, and really, stop the application of this powerful surveillance technology on Americans, it will inevitably expand to other things.
What is of huge and should be of huge interest to you is the underlying technology called the blockchain. This is the greatest innovation in computer science, to me, in a generation. The blockchain is basically, it's a distributed database. Think of a global spreadsheet. And this is a spreadsheet where information can be stored in a way that's immutable and uncorruptible and unchangeable.
So the problem is here that we seem to be forgetting just how much information we share, as we add it bit by bit in what I like to call data crumbs. Sure, that one picture you upload doesn't say a lot, but don't forget that this information is combined. And when it is, it provides an incredibly in-depth picture into your life.
Visa is leading the charge toward a cashless culture by connecting with electric race cars speeding through New York City.
We're already sharing biometric data with our phones, such as face scans and fingerprints, in order to unlock them, as well as some basic medical data.
Around the world, move away from cash to electronic because they're more convenient.
And let me warn you, we're entering a period of time where it's more valuable and sometimes even cheaper to store your data instead of delete it. And it's actively being used to train modern systems such as artificial intelligence.
Let's talk about Elon Musk for a second then.
I have exposure to the very most cutting edge AI, and I think people should be really concerned about it. I keep sounding the alarm bell.
When it comes to the rest of us, Google says that we've only got time until 2030 when robots can match human intelligence.
So I invited a special guest today to help me with the opening. So, wake up, my little friend. All right, he's with us. So, could you tell us who you are?
I am not Leverness.
Now, I know you are not Leverness. Leverness is standing here. So what's your name and why are you here?
My name is Nell, and I wanted to tell you all that my younger cousins are getting ready to conquest the world.
Really?
By a computer, that the computer would either never beat the best human player or that it was 20 years away. And last year, AlphaGo, which was done by DeepMind, which is a kind of a Google subsidiary, absolutely crushed the world's best player. And now it can play the top 50 simultaneously and crush them all. So, just like that pace of progress is remarkable.
So, you saw the movie. What is going on around the world? We have a major migration, a lot of millions of people fleeing war and injustice. We have a climate change that is causing natural disasters in different parts of the world. We have, as you heard, a rapid urbanization. Actually, 200,000 people every day move into urban areas globally.
Problems today are more global, and this means there is no way any country can solve them by itself, and we need global answers.
The Agenda 2030 is an agenda aiming at a fair globalization.
ID 2020 is a global strategic initiative aiming to help deliver against the United Nations sustainable goal of legal identity for all.
The Supreme Court has ruled that the right to privacy is not a fundamental right. But look at today's day and age, it's all digitized, all the information.
You don't have a choice, but you're going there voluntarily. This is not that. This is something far more dangerous. We are in something like a digital emergency, where the state or the government is taking all your data and linking it to everything else. When you buy an air ticket, a rail ticket, a ration card, a passport, a scholarship, whatever you do, they're all being compulsively taken. It started as voluntary, now it is mandatory, and it's everywhere.
So we're at one of those weird turning points, once again, in human history, where we're going to get another kick at the can to rewrite the economic power grid and to make a world that's more peer-to-peer and that's more just and that's more transparent. What an exciting time to be alive.
Attendance was off the charts, the largest participation ever at an NGA meeting.
AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization, in a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that.
We give them a set of rules and they follow them. In this instance, and we're talking 10 to 20 years away, I mean, for true artificial intelligence, it's going to be a very different place.
It's like like, this is really like the scariest problem to me, I tell you. Yeah, so I really think we need government regulation.
It's just, it never was so disruptive as it is these days. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is that disruption has become digital.
8th ABSO conference.
Very soon. And the first of those is the data that's being collected right now is in fact getting bigger. By way of scale, in the last 2 years, we've collected almost as much data as in the entirety of human history leading up to that.
You guys describe this as the nervous system for the planet. What do you mean?
Well, a lot of us think that all of us with our smartphones and our Google searches and all the things we're doing in the course of our day, that we're watching this sort of growth of a planetary brain. Imagine if you touched your finger to the stove, but you didn't know you'd burnt it for a week. Yeah. Now we have this real-time feedback loop that the human race has never had before.
If you're looking at the world of data, you're looking at the world of information. That's almost everything that isn't physical. The industrial world is the physical world, the data world is everything else.
And it affects every one of us every day. We're all being predicted.
Do you think people understand how much of our lives are being collected? What else do we not know?
We're now collecting exabytes and petabytes of data, and we're looking through that data set using incredibly powerful algorithms to see what we would never see before. Every powerful tool has a dark side, every last one.
But it's fair to ask companies, as they build out the Internet of Things, to not be creepy.
The Internet of Things is referring to this, all these gadgets.
Everything being connected.
Yeah.
Most people don't have any understanding of the scope of this stuff. Now, my background's in IT, specifically IT security. But as an example, it turns out in the US, just to give you an example, and only 14% of people understand that their web surfing history is being tracked. Now, for me, that's a little bit like discovering that 86% of the United States population still believe in the Easter Bunny. It's a little terrifying because it means that the conversations we're having here today put us all in an extraordinarily elite group in understanding the potential damages. Most people just don't know.
We are now more surveilled than we have ever been. Cities are covered in CCTV cameras. Authorities are gathering data on its citizens. It would be all too easy to confuse the real world with a sci-fi dystopia.
And I wonder, with big data, everything is becoming more and more targeted because you have more and more information about consumers.
I think that's exactly right. I think that what we're seeing today is that we can use predictive analytics to know a lot about the people that we're targeting.
In the movie Minority Reports, the pre-crimes unit race to arrest would-be offenders before they have a chance to commit their crimes. Now, they use psychics, but it turns out something similar is being attempted using big data.
The Vancouver Police Department is the first police agency in Canada to implement predictive policing technology.
And that information can turn a city into a digital world, allowing officers to essentially predict crime.
Okay, Jad, what's coming? Double homicide, one male, one female, killer's male.
But some of this technology is proving to be controversial, especially this. It's called the Strategic Subjects List, where HunchLab is concerned with predicting crimes and locations. This list is concerned with predicting crimes and individual people.
Well, interestingly, earlier this week I spoke to DJ Patil. Now, until recently, he was President Obama's chief data scientist. I asked him about this. This is what he said.
I have many deep concerns about the process of these things. The fundamental one is the transparency of the algorithm.
And so what was interesting is that, of course, when we are looking more specifically at automation and algorithms and the questions around it, of course there are many difficulties in identifying how, in many different cases, where automation and algorithms are actually used and take place. And one of the most frustrating things I found during the course of preparing this study that will hopefully come out sometime this year, and for which I'm the rapporteur, the fact of automation is very frequently, in my experience, lied about or is not acknowledged, the amount of automation and the amount of automated decision-making that takes place within society. And so one of the things that we found is that we're surrounded by quasi-automated decision-making, situations like the one that I'm mentioning, where the decisions are basically made by computers, but by current legal standards wouldn't be considered as such, because somewhere at some small process there is a human being in the loop. So we can pretend to ourselves that everything's okay, we're not surrounded by automation, and the world is a wonderful place. Now, of course, that's not true. When you start looking at these things in greater detail, you realize there's no reason to justify that. Yet still, this is an issue that we increasingly face, both defining the scope and the size of what we're going to be looking at. Because I think you need to start acknowledging that automation and automated decision-making procedures are far more prevalent in society than we previously, as scholars, as policymakers, as people within society, been willing to acknowledge.
Yeah. So is any other country to use the predictive technology for this?
We're the first in Canada. There is some predictive technology down in the United States. It's a different system. We've developed our own here in Vancouver that works for our city.
Korean police officers will soon implement AI technology to prevent crimes from happening and automatically track down criminals.
I don't know, they might be approached if they seem suspicious without any kind of good reason. So that would be my concern, is just like creating a culture of surveillance.
Violent crime in Chicago has seen a dramatic increase.
15-year-old male shot in the neck. Those shots fired at Hirsch and Tom, and this one just coming in. 5 shots fired. Give me a wagon with a body bag also.
The response from Chicago's police department is a new initiative driven by technology, which aims to predict where crimes are likely to occur.
I think if someone had walked up to you 10 years ago and said, could I plant a little device on you that would tell me who you've spoken to today, what you're curious about, what books you've read, what money you would have spent, you would have said, are you kidding? There's no way I'd let anybody put a device like that on me. And now we line up and sleep in front of the Apple store for 2 days to pay $800 because it's so convenient.
What is your take on the Chinese government publicly ramping up its efforts in AI?
This is a clear directive coming from the top ranks of the Chinese government saying we want to be the global leader in this area.
Alibaba's new store, Tao Cafe, is now open in the eastern Chinese city of Hangzhou. Customers scan a QR code from their phones when they walk out. When they leave, facial recognition technology identifies the customer and their accounts are automatically charged.
The new generation of artificial intelligence technology is rapidly penetrating into all walks of society and transforming every part of the economy.
I think we live in a world now where highly sensitive information are all over the place. They are accessible to a large number of actors without our knowledge or consent. We are surrounded by vulnerable connected devices and networks. And the last point is our interaction, our very intimate lives are increasingly shaped by decisions that are made by inherently opaque artificial intelligence.
The store is part of a new artificial intelligence town in Hangzhou.
We are not going to make a store that everyone is already familiar with. The truth is, the cafe needs to be redefined. Supermarkets need to be redefined.
The next thing is that big data can personalize everything. This I talked a little bit in my last book, but it turns out that it's coming true in lots of ways that I hadn't necessarily expected.
So, my son Jesse is 10 years old, and I've been working on this project for the last year and a half, and he often wanders in the kitchen late at night after the kids are gone to bed and I'm sitting there working, and he came in a few months ago and he said, Dad, every time you're on the phone, you're always saying this thing, big data. What is big data? And I was thinking, this is like the ultimate challenge. How do you explain? I mean, I'm still trying to understand what it is, and how do you explain to a 10-year-old what big data is? So I was struggling for an analogy. I said, Jesse, imagine if your whole life you've been looking through one eye, and all of a sudden, for the first time in your life, scientists enabled you to open up another eye. So what you're not getting is it's not just more vision, it's not more data, it's a different dimension. You're seeing things that were there, but you couldn't see them before until you had that second perspective. And so, of course, being 10 years old, he said, so, like, could scientists let me open up a third eye and a fourth and 1,000 eyes? Like, if you're 10 years old, 1,000 eyes is so cool. And I said, yeah, actually, that is exactly what's happening. You can take literally 1,000 different sets of data and find patterns in them that we've never been able to perceive before. And it's really like different dimensions. It's actually quite hard to grasp.
Also raises concerns about privacy. Could you be giving up too much of yours with a simple wave of your hand?
To implant chips like these in the hands of volunteers among its workforce.
It is vying to become the first company in the US to microchip employees.
The summit's right out of 1984, but Jamie Yuccas found willing workers in 2017.
Do you think this is the future?
It is the future.
You don't get one side without the other. When there's a new tool, it can be used for good or evil.
It's just convenient, you know. The idea is you just wave your hand.
And designed to replace the traditional keypad for opening doors, using the copier, even buying food in the cafeteria.
To be able to purchase it. But what if there was a way that you wouldn't have to do any of that?
It sounds a bit like a plot point in a dystopian novel.
Right. That whole, I know it's very futuristic, I get it, but I think what's wrong with just taking out your card? But good for them.
I think it's the wave of the future, that we'll all have implanted chips that have our medical records.
The question now is what do we do from here? And the answer, I think, is that we do what we are doing here now. We talk to each other, we try and figure out how to get other people to talk about it, and we try and get society at large to recognize that this is a critical issue. Now there's, I think, a really critical timeline on all of this. Right now, only about 1/3 of the planet is online. So that's us and a few other people. The remaining 2/3, however, are coming online.
And look, I'm all for having an inclusive society where we're respectful of the differences between other people, being kind to each other, you know, but freedom of speech, freedom of thought. When we're reaching a place where all-girl high schools can't use the word girls because it's offensive, you know, things are just slightly getting out of control.
Think about the sort of music that was coming out of the counterculture of the 1960s. The sort of music that celebrated almost a prophecy chart of secular progressivism. Think of John Lennon's Imagine, There's No Heaven. Think of the way that Bob Dylan is singing, The Times They Are Changing, which means if you don't get on board, you're gonna sink like a stone.
And I cannot believe where we're going for this story, an unlikely place, Texas.
And when we reach a stage where we're having to be so careful about what we're saying, you know, is this going to offend, you know, you? People don't like cats.
I've been staggered by the amount. It's just this rush to take offense.
And ever since 2010, they have put up 3,000 flags on September the 11th to memorialize the 3,000 lives lost.
And that's what we're seeing there, all those on the ground with the flags?
Well, the Young Americans for Freedom, the organization behind it, told just in the last week or two they had to move them, and some said it's because of liberal outrage over triggering messages that it sent.
But you're always running the possibility of offending someone, and we can't have a society where no one is offended. That's part of human nature, and it's part of having emotions.
I love being offended. This is the American flag.
Right.
This is something that unites all of us. We're all Americans.
How is the American flag triggering, harmful, or harassing?
Major change to its signature award statue. It will no longer be the Moon Man, rather a moon person. The decision comes after the network eliminated gender-specific categories.
Well, for all of our lives, we've lived in a world of boys and girls, but that is changing along with everything else in 2017. So these are questions that didn't exist like 18 months ago. Homo sapiens have been around 300,000 years, and for the most part, it was kind of obvious who the boys and girls were. But we've decided in a very short period of time that none of that is real, and we're changing it, because why?
Now, what is the role of Christianity in liberal democracies?
Look, I think the role of Christianity is indispensable in the West. It's given us the freedoms, the attractive society. There's a lot of atheists and secularists who are jumping on the census data to say, look, Christianity's in decline, yada yada. I think what we're seeing is the falling away of cultural Christianity.
There would be a season of great persecution, and in that, there'd be deception, there'd be shakings, there'd be confusion, there'd be disturbances, and there'd be a great falling away. Why is this important? Because I think it's interesting to consider. So I'm personally seeing what, to me, I would say is a surprising falling away.
We feel it is getting harder to be someone who carries a Christian perspective into the public square in this nation, and I think that's something that's concerning a lot of people.
There will be mockers following after their own ungodly lusts. All you need is an internet connection, a television, or the least bit of discernment, and you can see that's going on.
If you say to a little kid, you know, I don't know if you're male or female, you decide, I don't think you're going to get a good outcome a lot of the time at all. That's why people have never done that through human history.
There is always going to be a difference between men and women. We are built differently, in case anybody hasn't noticed.
Whenever God is doing something powerful in the earth, the enemy twists it into something wicked and deceitful. And what I'm seeing right now is this whole gender confusion issue.
We know a lot about the biology of sex because we know that it begins on the chromosomal level. Like, there's a science piece to this that's being ignored by people who I thought believed in science. So that's why I'm a little bit confused.
To where the truth that there's no male or female is being twisted into a lie and deception of there's no such thing as male or female. Gender's fluid.
Let's just let you develop as a human being, and eventually you can decide whether or not you want to be a boy or girl or non-binary.
Yeah, but you can't actually decide. And I'm for choice, and there are a lot of biological realities that I'm sad about. And so I'm not attacking anybody, but don't you think that biological reality matters, and lying to kids and telling them, you know, actually you could be 6'7", or you could have blue eyes instead of brown, or whatever. I mean, those are lies, and it's never a good idea to lie to kids, is it?
For the highly anticipated Disney Channel original movie Descendants 2, here they are with a mashup of ways to be wicked.
We live in a world right now where the problem is we don't know what normal is. Because all we've ever known is a fallen universe in which the wicked one holds sway. 1 John 5.
Thomas Jefferson, you know, the great Enlightenment thinker, a deist, but deeply infused with a Christian understanding of the world. He said, can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are a gift of God?
Tonight in Spain, flames take over a music festival, forcing thousands to flee. Take a look at this. A fire engulfed the stage at the Tomorrowland Unite Music Festival in Barcelona.
The official website of the festival, which is called the Tomorrowland Festival, blamed a technical malfunction, but officials are still investigating the cause of the fire.
The Tomorrowland Unite Festival was being streamed from Belgium. Spanish authorities say all 22,000
One of the things that we're starting to even hear from atheist scientists is that the more that we know about the universe, the more that we know what we don't know about the universe. And that there is so much that makes the universe work, dark energy, dark matter, that no one even knows what it is or how to define it.
But do you see how the enemy can even take a truth in God and twist it into where we've fallen away from the truth?
That there's a fluidity about gender and it's not necessarily rooted in biology.
Why does that not extend to race?
Tell me what you mean by that. You're going to have to
If
explain
I
that
can
one to me.
say I'm a woman, why can't I say I'm a Chinese woman and be taken every bit as seriously? And I'm not mocking you. I'm making a sincere point, and it's a sincere question. What's the difference?
You know, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think as we progress as a society, some of these labels that we're putting on things, and I can't necessarily go to the race question.
Democracy and freedom can't work without a self-governing people who recognise there's a transcendent. At the moment, our politicians think they're God. Well, the American founders knew that a free society wouldn't work unless it wasn't God.
It's self-expression and self-identity. That is precisely why we are living in a time when so much of what goes on around us is conflict and anger. That's true in interpersonal relationships, and it is true within churches, and it is true within cultures. the spiritual realities that are around us all the time, and we are not able to see them except by receiving the Word of God and believing the Word of God.
Every single one of you matter. Every single one of you is important. Every single one of you is a part of God's plan for this hour. And the enemy wants to shake you. The enemy wants to disturb you. The enemy wants to deceive you. And the enemy wants you falling away from your faith, because we are in the very beginning of the greatest move of God the earth has ever seen. And you are going to be a part of it. And the enemy is terrified of you.
It is difficult to know what is rooted in the truth and what is not. Are lies dressed as truth, reshaping our world, or has post-truth always been a reality?
The age of the transgender athlete has arrived.
But this identity, irrational as it may be, explodes our truth as a culture.
When all Americans are treated as equal, we are all more free.
This has got nothing to do with the First Amendment. It is about the fact that I do think we as Americans, as people, need to honor differences of opinion.
The engineer who's been identified by American media as James Damore has been fired from the internet giant.
Manifesto written by a Google engineer has put diversity and sexism back in the forefront.
This after he wrote an internal document asserting that there were biological reasons why men and women weren't equally represented.
They effectively have fired somebody for dissenting from the group consensus while using facts and logic to make his position.
Yes, the USA heralds itself as the land of the free and the home of the brave. But on certain college campuses in Silicon Valley and in other parts of the country, there's an atmosphere brewing where if you have the wrong political opinions or cultural views, there could be very harsh consequences.
What subversion is? Basically, it consists of 4 periods, time-wise. If we start from here and go this way, time, right? This is the beginning point. The first stage of subversion is the process which is called, basically, demoralization. It says for itself what it is.
And we believe that sexism, racism, homophobia, and bigotry have no place in this country.
Damore told CBS News that before he was fired, he complained to the National Labor Relations Board that Google was trying to silence him.
This is quite a interesting and kind of quick development in our culture and now in sporting events.
The moment you bring a country to the point of almost total demoralization, when nothing works anymore, when you are not sure whether it is right or wrong, good and bad, but there's no division between evil and good.
We're afloat in this culture of confusion.
Identity is not necessarily reality. What a person identifies as doesn't make it a fact.
But how did we get here? How do we arrive at a place where truth is not as important as personal preferences, even when we acknowledge it exists?
Are people not happier these days, as one writer puts it, to live in worlds built out of our own facts?
What if there was a place where the unthinkable didn't happen and life could continue for progressive Americans just as before?
Now there is. Welcome to The Bubble. The Bubble is a planned community of like-minded free thinkers, and no one else.
However, when I read the memo, look, even if you disagree with every single point he made, I felt he made his points in a logical, calm,
The next step is destabilization. Again, this word says for itself what it is. To destabilize all the relations, all the accepted institutions and organizations in a country.
But what makes this summer program unique is the campers it serves. Transgender children, some as young as 4 years old. It's a place where they can use the pronoun of their choice.
But these few people who I think have lost their true identity are breaking up the truth for the rest of us. It's a very big threat to our culture.
My question for you is this: has that agreement actually come in our day? Are you agreeing with everybody? Do you see the world agreeing with everybody? Hardly speaking. What it's led to are a couple of things that I want to point out to you. This post-truth mindset that elevates preferences over truth has led to a couple of things. It has not led to autonomy and liberation. It's led to chaos. The first thing it's led to is a sense of anger and vilification.
10, 15, 20 years ago, we would be angry, say, why so much hatred? Today we are not. We say, well, commonplace.
It's what I call the Hitlerization of social commentary. If you don't agree with me, you're Hitler. That's happened now, hasn't it? And I don't mean if you disagree with me, I mean if you don't agree with me, even if a lack of assent.
Particularly at a company like Google, which basically controls our information flow, for these guys to start basically saying this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, is really quite dangerous.
I love that line about because he was walking around as a man, no one even noticed he was pregnant. They just thought he had a beer belly.
The beer belly, that's right. And sharing it on social media so that everybody can understand and learn a little bit more about it is great.
Like a virus taking over a computer, the mind that writes the sentence, transgender man gives birth to a boy, has been completely corrupted by political pressure.
They actively include themselves in a political process. All of a sudden we see a homosexual. 15 years ago he did his dirty job and nobody cared. Now he makes it a political issue.
The law of the jungle, not the law of civilization.
When the legitimate bodies of power, the social structure collapse, it cannot function anymore.
Underestimated outcomes that have divided the world.
So it recognizes, in distinction to postmodernism, it recognizes that truth actually exists. It just elevates preferences over it. Truth exists, we kind of don't care as long as we get what we want. And there are those, the men of steel and the women of steel, who want to tell you that their voices can get you what you want. And they're the ones who say, we have the answers. But all of this is leading to a culture of confusion.
Law and order now also is pushed into the area where previously people settled their differences peacefully and legitimately. Now, we cannot solve our problems anymore. The society at large becomes more and more antagonistic between individuals, between groups of individuals, and the society at large.
It reminds me of the song that was so popular in the 80s when I was growing up, which dates me terribly, but a song called The Land of Confusion by the band Genesis. Remember what the words were? Oh, Superman, where are you now? When everything's gone wrong somehow, these men of steel, these men of power are losing control by the hour. Does that not describe today? Could that song not be written yesterday?
So therefore, the population at large is looking for a savior, some strong man, strong government, a leader, a savior is needed.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
Equality, mind you. President Kennedy once said, we will make America to believe that people are born equal. Are people born equal? Is there any mentioning in the Bible? There is not a single word about equality. Just the opposite. You cannot legislate equality. If you want to be equal, you have to be equal. You have to deserve it. And yet we build our society on the principle of equality. We say people are equal. We know it is false. It's a lie. Material values are good, but it's not the prime function of human being. Because you have to live with something. Obviously, the design for our life is not to consume more deodorants. There must be something greater. If such a complicated instrument as human body was created, obviously there must be some higher purpose for that.
Do any one of you here think that what we're seeing has been detrimental to society as a whole?
Well, I think the loss, I mean, if you start to disagree about how to see truth and how to establish it and agree what it is, then I think you're in some danger.
We recognize truth, but subordinate it to preference because we have sacrificed truth and clarity on the altar of human autonomy. I'm a law unto myself. I get to decide what's right and wrong for myself, and you get to do the same thing. The problem is when we collide. I'm a law unto myself and you're a law unto yourself because we're so autonomous. There's going to come a time when my set of values is going to collide with your set of values.
But truth is under a lot of attack.
Mika, you wanted to say something, please do.
Well, how do you define truth?
When we remove the boundaries, remove the fences, we lose that sense of purpose and we lose that true freedom.
Have you ever met a person who would sacrifice his life, freedom, for the truth like that? This is truth. I never met a person who said, this is truth and I'm ready to shoot me. To defend the truth.
The Bible is not against your freedom, it's very much in favor of it because it doesn't want you to result in chaos. And Jesus claims to be the true source of that freedom. And he makes a statement that's pretty interesting. He says, freedom is inextricably intertwined with truth.
Something which is not material moves society and helps it to survive.
Now, the culture says that preferences over truth leads to autonomy. The Bible points out that autonomy over truth leads to chaos. But Jesus says that he is the embodiment of truth and he sets you free.
And the other way around. The moment we turn into 2 by 2 is 4 and make it a guiding principle of our life, our existence, we die. Even though this is true and this we cannot prove. We only can feel and have faith in it. So the answer to ideological subversion, strangely enough, is very simple. You simply have to have faith.
He doesn't tell you. See, Jesus is not a post-truth man. A post-truth man would tell you what you prefer to hear, not what's actually true. Jesus tells you what is true, not what you want to hear. He's not trying to sell you something. He's trying to tell you like it is.